Welcome to African Mafia Stories, where loyalty is currency, power has a price, and every city hides a secret. Today's story is based in Egypt. Enjoy.
The first dead man I ever saw was still breathing. That was the problem. He lay across the marble floor of the museum vault with blood slipping slowly beneath him like spilled wine, one hand stretched toward me, eyes glassy but alive enough to beg. Not for help. For silence. Above us, the lights in downtown Cairo flickered. Then the entire city went dark. Again. People later called it a power failure. But in Cairo, blackouts had personalities. Some came quietly. Others arrived like curses. This one arrived with gunfire. The emergency sirens inside the museum began to pulse red through the darkness. Ancient statues stood around us like witnesses pretending not to see anything. Pharaohs. Gods. Monsters carved in stone. And me. Nadine El-Sayed. 29 years old. Art restoration specialist. Professional liar. I pressed both hands against the wounded man's stomach as shouting erupted somewhere beyond the vault doors. Arabic. Russian. Then screaming. The wounded man grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. Listen carefully, he whispered. Blood bubbled at the edge of his mouth. They cannot open the case. I looked toward the black steel container beside the shattered display cabinet. What case? His fingers tightened. If they take it out of Egypt, he coughed violently. Thousands die. Of course. Men always became poets when they were bleeding. Another burst of gunfire cracked through the museum halls. Closer now. I should explain something. I am not brave. People think women become fearless after enough pain. That is cinema nonsense written by men who have never watched a woman calculate survival in real time. Fear is useful. Fear kept me alive when my father disappeared 15 years ago. Fear taught me how to smile at dangerous men without encouraging them. Fear taught me which government officials accepted bribes and which ones preferred blackmail. Fear also taught me when to run. And at that exact moment, every instinct in my body screamed run. But then the wounded man shoved something into my hand. A key. Old brass. Heavy. Covered in symbols. My pulse stopped. I recognized them immediately. Not because I was an archaeologist. Because my father had spent half his life drawing them before he vanished. Footsteps thundered outside the vault. The wounded man looked directly into my eyes. You are Hassan's daughter. Not a question. A statement. I spread through my chest. How do you know my father? But the man was already fading. Do not trust, he whispered weakly. The vault doors exploded inward. The blast threw me backward across the floor. Smoke swallowed the room. Armed men stormed inside wearing black tactical gear and night vision goggles. Military precision. Not thieves. Hunters. One of them grabbed me violently and slammed me against a pillar. Another checked the wounded man. Dead now. The leader stepped through the smoke slowly. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark coat despite the Cairo heat. His face half hidden beneath the emergency red lights. Then he removed the black gloves from his hands carefully. Calmly. Like a surgeon preparing for work. That frightened me more than the guns. He looked down at the dead man. Then at me. You're not supposed to be here, he said softly. His Arabic carried traces of something else underneath. European maybe. Hard to place. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not because he recognized me. Because he noticed my clenched fist. The key. I moved before thinking. I drove my elbow into the man holding me and ran. Pure instinct. Stupid instinct. Gunshots exploded behind me as I sprinted through the dark museum halls. Ancient relics blurred past in flashes of red emergency light. Alarms screamed overhead. I crashed through a side corridor and nearly slipped on shattered glass. Outside, downtown Cairo had become chaos. No traffic lights. No street lamps. Just headlights, shouting, smoke, and thousands of angry voices flooding the streets beneath the blackout. The city felt alive. Not alive like a person. Alive like an animal. I shoved through crowds near Tahrir Square, breathing hard, my heart trying to tear its way out of my chest. Behind me, black SUVs emerged from the museum road. Still following? Of course they were. Because somewhere in the middle of Cairo's darkness, I had accidentally stolen something powerful enough to make armed men invade a national museum during a citywide blackout. And somehow, it had something to do with my father. The father who vanished without a body. The father everyone told me to stop searching for. The father whose last words to me were, "If anyone ever asks about the Black Ledger, lie." I turned sharply into Con El-Khalili Market, disappearing beneath hanging lanterns and narrow stone alleys. The ancient market breathed around me even at night. Tea smoke. Cardamom. Sweat. Old money. Old secrets. And somewhere behind me, death was walking calmly through Cairo looking for me. I didn't know it yet. But before sunrise, 3 governments, 2 crime syndicates, and 1 man they called the Falcon of Alexandria would all begin hunting me across Egypt. And the worst part? The Falcon wasn't trying to kill me. He was trying to save me. By midnight, Cairo smelled like overheated engines and panic. Blackouts changed people. The rich became nervous. The poor became invisible. And predators became ambitious. I pushed through the crowded arteries of Con El-Khalili Market with my hood pulled low, trying not to look like a woman being hunted by professional killers. Which, unfortunately, is exactly the kind of thing that makes you look like a woman being hunted by professional killers. Every shadow felt alive. Every face looked twice. The brass key burned against my palm inside my jacket pocket. I ducked into a tiny cafe hidden between 2 antique shops. The owner barely glanced at me. Cairo cafes had seen everything. Affairs. Smugglers. Revolutionaries. Foreign spies pretending to be tourists with terrible Arabic. I slid into the darkest corner booth and forced myself to breathe. Think, Nadine. Think. The dead man knew my father. The symbols on the key matched my father's journals. And armed mercenaries had stormed a museum to recover it. Which meant one thing. My father had lied to me far more than I originally suspected. A waiter placed tea in front of me without asking. Extra mint. I froze. Only one person knew I drank tea that way. Slowly, I looked up. The old man sitting across from me wore a gray galabia and thick glasses. His beard looked untamed enough to hide small wildlife. But the eyes were familiar. Sharp. Annoyed. Dangerously intelligent. "Uncle Yusuf," I whispered. Yusuf El-Mosri sighed dramatically. "You took your time noticing me. Your father would be embarrassed." Relief hit me so hard it almost hurt. Then suspicion followed immediately behind it. "You knew they were coming." "Of course I knew," he snapped quietly. "Half the criminal ecosystem of Northern Africa currently wants your organs rearranged." Typical Yusuf. If sarcasm were currency, he would have owned Dubai. I leaned forward urgently. "What is happening?" Yusuf glanced toward the cafe entrance before answering. "The Black Ledger has resurfaced." The words landed heavily between us. I waited. Nothing. That means absolutely nothing to me. His expression darkened. Good. It means your father succeeded. Outside, thunder rolled over Cairo's skyline. Rare. Unnatural. A storm gathering over the desert. Yusuf removed an old photograph from inside his robe and slid it across the table. 3 men stood beside my father near the Mediterranean coast. One wore military uniform. One wore a tailored black suit. And the third. My stomach tightened. Even in a faded photograph, he looked dangerous. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Cold eyes. Dark hair swept back by sea wind. His expression carried the kind of calm that belonged to men who had already survived the worst thing imaginable. The Falcon, I whispered. Yusuf nodded grimly. Adel Rahman. Known across smuggling routes from Alexandria to Tangier. Gun runner. Fixer. Smuggler. Executioner. Depending on which government report you believed, he was responsible for somewhere between 40 and 200 deaths. Depending on which criminal you asked, he was either a myth or the reason they still slept with weapons under their pillows. They call him the Falcon because he sees everything before anyone else does, Yusuf murmured. I stared at the photograph. The man from the museum. Yes. Wonderful. Naturally, the terrifying man leading heavily armed killers had to be one of the most feared criminals in North Africa. Why was my father working with him? Yusuf hesitated. That frightened me more than anything else tonight. Because Yusuf never hesitated. Finally he spoke quietly. 20 years ago, your father helped hide something. The ledger? Yes. What is it? Yusuf rubbed his face tiredly. A record. Of what? Everyone. That answer settled into my chest like cold metal. Politicians. Military officers. Bankers. Crime syndicates. Oil executives. Smugglers. Assassins. Bribes. Mass graves. Disappearances. Every ugly secret powerful men buried beneath money. The kind of information capable of collapsing governments. The kind people killed entire bloodlines to possess. I suddenly understood why armed mercenaries had invaded a museum. And why my father disappeared. Where is it now? I whispered. Yusuf looked directly at me. That, he said carefully, is why they need you alive. The cafe lights flickered. Then died completely. Darkness swallowed the room. A collective groan rose from the cafe patrons. Outside, Cairo vanished into black again. Yusuf stood instantly. Move. Gunshots erupted outside less than 2 seconds later. The cafe windows exploded inward. People screamed. Tables overturned. I hit the floor as bullets tore through wood above my head. Yusuf grabbed my arm violently. Back exit. We ran through the kitchen while cooks shouted in panic. Hot oil spilled across the tiles behind us. Someone crashed into shelves of glasses. Outside, the alleyways behind the market twisted like veins through ancient stone. Rain began falling suddenly. Hard. Warm desert rain hammering rooftops. We sprinted through darkness while gunfire echoed behind us. How did they find us? I shouted. Yusuf gave me an offended look while running. You brought the apocalypse to Cairo, Habibti. Tracking you is currently everybody's favorite hobby. A black SUV slid sideways into the alley ahead of us. Men poured out holding rifles. We stopped instantly. Trapped. Another engine roared behind us. Second vehicle. More armed men. Yusef cursed softly in Arabic. The first group advanced toward us cautiously. Then all hell broke loose. Gunfire exploded from above. Not at us. At them. 3 shooters dropped before they even understood what was happening. The alley erupted into chaos. A figure landed from a rooftop balcony with terrifying precision. Dark coat. Black gloves. Suppressed pistol. The Falcon. Adel Ramon moved through the alley like violence had personally trained him. Efficient. Controlled. Brutal. No wasted motion. 2 more men went down instantly. One tried firing wildly. Adel shot him without even fully turning his body. The remaining attackers retreated toward their vehicles. Smart decision. Adel grabbed one of them before he escaped and slammed him against the SUV hard enough to dent the door. "Who sent you?" he asked calmly. The terrified man spat blood. Adel sighed. Then shot him in the leg. The scream echoed through the alley. I stared at him in shock. Not because of the violence. Because of how calm he remained during it. Like this was routine. Like ordering coffee. He looked toward me finally. Rain slid down his face slowly. For one strange second, the entire alley went quiet in my mind. His eyes locked onto mine. Sharp. Unreadable. Dangerous enough to change lives. You, he said evenly, are becoming very expensive to protect. Then headlights flooded the alley entrance behind him. More vehicles. Far more. Adele's expression hardened immediately. Run, he ordered. What about you? A faint humorless smile touched his mouth. Everyone asking that question tonight seems deeply committed to disappointment. Rain transformed Cairo into a hallucination. Neon signs bled across flooded streets. Ancient mosques disappeared behind curtains of storm water. Car horns screamed from every direction like trapped animals. And somewhere behind us, men with automatic rifles were still trying to kill me. Or kidnap me. Honestly, the distinction was beginning to feel decorative. I ran beside Adel Ramon through a maze of alleys while Uncle Yusef struggled to keep up behind us, muttering prayers and insults in equal measure. Mostly insults. Adel never looked back. That bothered me. Most men check whether you were following them. Adel moved with the certainty of someone who expected the world to obey his decisions. Gunfire cracked behind us again. Closer now. Adele grabbed my wrist suddenly and yanked me sideways just as bullets shredded the wall where my head had been. My heart nearly exited my body. He shoved open a rusted metal door hidden between 2 abandoned storefronts. In. What is this place? Somewhere people disappear. Not reassuring. We descended a narrow staircase into darkness while the storm raged overhead. The deeper we went, the colder the air became. The city sounds faded. Then vanished entirely. At the bottom, Adele unlocked another door using a fingerprint scanner hidden inside the wall. The steel door hissed open. And I stopped breathing for a moment. An underground operation center stretched beneath the streets of Cairo. Not a bunker. A kingdom. Screens glowed across stone walls older than most countries. Armed guards monitored surveillance feeds from ports, airports, highways, and border crossings across North Africa. Maps covered entire sections of the walls. Shipping routes. Weapons routes. Government facilities. Smuggling corridors. This wasn't criminal. This was infrastructure. People looked up as we entered. Every single one of them reacted to Adele the same way. Not fear. Not admiration. Recognition. Like wolves acknowledging the largest wolf in the room. One woman approached immediately. Tall. Beautiful. scar running from her jawline to her throat. Former military, if posture meant anything. 3 teams searching Old Cairo, she reported calmly. Another at the museum perimeter. They've sealed roads toward Giza. Her eyes flicked toward me briefly. Curious. Assessing. Dangerous. Adele removed his soaked gloves. Has anyone breached the eastern tunnels? No. Good. Only then did he look at me again. You're bleeding. I looked down. Glass had sliced across my forearm sometime during the chase. I hadn't even noticed. Sit, he ordered. I folded my arms immediately. No. One eyebrow lifted slightly. The man barely showed emotion, yet somehow managed to look exhausted already. You intend to challenge every instruction I give? I don't trust you. That makes 2 of us. Fair point. Still, I remained standing. Adele stepped closer. Rainwater still clung to his coat. Up close, I could finally see the faint scar near his temple and the exhaustion hidden behind his eyes. Not old exhaustion. Ancient exhaustion. The kind carried by people who had buried too many friends. You should let her clean the wound, he said quietly. No. Nadine. The way he said my name startled me. Not soft. Not intimate. Precise. Like he was memorizing a weapon. How do you know my name? I asked. A silence passed between us. Then. Because your father talked about you constantly. That hit harder than it should have. I swallowed carefully. You knew him? Yes. Where is he? Something shifted behind Adele's eyes. Not quite grief. But close enough to cast a shadow. I don't know. I laughed bitterly. Convenient. You think I'm lying? I think men like you survive by lying. For the first time all night, something almost resembling anger crossed his face. Tiny. Controlled. But real. Men like me, he repeated softly. The room had gone quiet around us. Even the guards were pretending not to listen now. Adele stepped closer until only inches separated us. You have absolutely no idea what kind of man I am. The temperature in the room seemed to change. I hated that my pulse reacted to his voice. Hated it. Because attraction toward dangerous men was how intelligent women ended up on crime documentaries. Before I could answer, alarms suddenly erupted across the operations center. Every screen flashed red. The scarred woman turned sharply toward the monitors. Movement in Tunnel 4. One of the surveillance feeds exploded into static. Then another. Then another. Adele moved instantly. Seal the lower gates. Already trying. Get her out of here. My stomach dropped. What's happening? Nobody answered. Then the first explosion hit. The underground chamber shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere below us, men screamed. Gunfire erupted through the tunnels. Not distant. Inside. The scarred woman shoved a pistol into my hands. I stared at it. I don't know how to use this. Tonight seems like an excellent time to learn. Another explosion thundered beneath us. The lights flickered violently. Adele grabbed a rifle from one of the guards and checked the magazine with mechanical calm. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me. Like calculating probabilities. You can still leave, he said. I almost laughed. Leave to where? Anywhere that isn't attached to me. That answer landed strangely. Before I could process it, a blood-covered guard stumbled into the chamber. Tunnels breach. Behind him came automatic gunfire. Then shadows. Men flooding into the underground corridor wearing tactical armor and night vision gear. Not police. Not military. Professionals. One tossed a grenade. Adele moved faster than thought. He grabbed me violently and threw both of us behind a stone support pillar as the explosion tore through the chamber. The blast wave slammed into us. My ears rang instantly. Smoke swallowed the room. People shouting. Gunfire everywhere. I coughed hard, trying to breathe. Adele's body shielded mine against the debris instinctively. That surprised me almost as much as the explosion. Bullets sparked against the pillar inches from our heads. Adele leaned sideways and returned fire with terrifying accuracy. 3 shots. 3 bodies dropped. I stared at him. How are you this calm? Practice. Not remotely funny. A second team pushed into the chamber from another tunnel entrance. We were surrounded now. The scarred woman shouted from across the room. Adele. His eyes flicked toward her. That single distraction nearly got him killed. A rifle burst tore into the pillar beside us. Stone fragments slashed across my cheek. Adele turned back sharply. Too late. One of the attackers had already moved behind him. I saw the knife before he did. Without thinking, I fired the pistol. The recoil nearly broke my wrist. The attacker collapsed instantly. Dead. Silence crashed through my body. I stared at the man on the ground. I had just killed someone. Adele looked at me carefully. No judgment. No comfort either. Only recognition. The kind soldiers probably gave each other after first blood. Then he reached over calmly and adjusted my grip on the pistol. You're holding it wrong. The dead man's eyes stayed open. That bothered me most. Not the blood spreading beneath him. Not the smell of gunpowder choking the underground chamber. Not even the fact that I had just shot someone at nearly point-blank range. It was the eyes. Still staring. Still surprised. As though death had interrupted him mid-thought. Around us, chaos continued roaring through the tunnels beneath Cairo. Men shouted over comms. Bullets ricocheted off ancient stone. Smoke rolled through the underground operations center in gray waves while emergency lights painted everything red. And somehow, in the middle of all that violence, Adele Ramon remained unnervingly calm. You're dissociating, he said. I blinked hard. What? His rifle fired twice around the edge of the pillar. 2 more attackers dropped somewhere in the smoke. Your brain is trying to separate you from what just happened. Another shot. Very common. I stared at him incredulously. Are you psychologically analyzing me during a gunfight? Yes. You're insane. A tiny pause. Possibly. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not a smile exactly. The memory of one. Another explosion shook the chamber violently. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. The scarred woman from earlier sprinted toward us through the smoke. There are too many, she shouted. They knew the tunnel layout. Adele's expression hardened immediately. A traitor. I could see the conclusion forming in real time behind his eyes. Someone inside had sold them access. Wonderful. Exactly what every traumatized woman wanted in an underground fortress full of armed criminals. Betrayal. Adele grabbed my arm. Move. We ran deeper into the tunnels while gunfire echoed behind us. The underground passageways twisted beneath Cairo like buried arteries. Old stone. Ancient humidity. History pressing from every direction. At one point the tunnel walls changed completely. Hieroglyphics. My breath caught. These tunnels are ancient. They connect to older structures beneath the city, Adele replied without slowing. Some predate modern Cairo itself. Naturally. Because apparently I couldn't just be hunted through regular criminal hideouts. We had to upgrade into cursed archaeological catacombs. Behind us, footsteps thundered through the tunnels. Still coming. Always coming. The scarred woman checked her magazine while running. We're losing the Western teams. How many attackers? At least 40. I nearly stumbled. 40? Adele glanced at me briefly. You sound surprised. Because normal people are not chased through underground death mazes by private armies. Fair observation. The man delivered sarcasm like he was rationing it during wartime. We reached a massive underground chamber lined with pillars. And stopped. Bodies. At least 8 of Adele's men lay scattered across the floor. Executed. Clean shots. Professional work. The scarred woman swore softly. Adele crouched beside one of the bodies. I watched his face carefully. Still controlled. Still calm. But something colder entered the room around him now. Not grief. Vengeance. He touched the dead guard's shoulder briefly. A silent promise. Then he stood. Someone opened the southern gate manually. The woman nodded grimly. Internal access only. A sharp electronic beep interrupted them. One of the dead guard's radios crackled weakly. Then a voice emerged through the static. Falcon. Every muscle in the room tightened. The voice was male. Smooth. Educated. Almost amused. You always were difficult to kill. Adele took the radio slowly. Kareem. The name landed heavily. Even the scarred woman went pale. Interesting. Still alive, the voice continued warmly. That's disappointing. I specifically requested overwhelming firepower. Adele's eyes became glacial. You sold us. Please. A soft laugh crackled through the radio. You say that like loyalty still exists in our profession. Gunfire echoed faintly behind the transmission. Screams. Then silence. My stomach tightened. Kareem continued casually. Bring me the girl, Adele. This does not need to become emotional. Adele's jaw tightened almost invisibly. You're already emotional. Another amused laugh. I taught you better than that. The transmission ended. Silence followed. Heavy silence. I looked between them. Who is Kareem? Nobody answered immediately. That alone terrified me. Finally the scarred woman spoke quietly. He's the reason Adele became the Falcon. That sentence carried enough ghosts to lower the room temperature. Before I could ask more, Adele looked toward me. We need to move. No. Both of them blinked. I folded my arms despite the pistol still shaking slightly in my hand. I am done running blindly through ancient murder tunnels without explanations. The scarred woman actually looked impressed. Adele looked exhausted. We do not have time. You keep saying that. Because people are trying to kill us. Yes, I noticed the bullets. His stare held mine for several long seconds. Then something unexpected happened. He relented. Barely. But still. Kareem was my commanding officer, he said quietly. Military. Of course. You were army? Special operations. The pieces clicked together violently. Not a smuggler who learned combat. A soldier who learned crime. Far more dangerous. Adele continued. 12 years ago, Kareem began selling military intelligence to private networks. Weapons. State secrets. Human trafficking routes. The scarred woman added quietly. When Adele discovered it, Karim murdered his entire unit. I looked at Adele sharply. His expression never changed. But suddenly the exhaustion in his eyes made sense. Not ancient. Survivor's guilt. Karim had destroyed everyone he loved. And you went after him, I guessed. Adele picked up his rifle. No. The single word sounded like unfinished business. Gunfire exploded nearby again. Closer now. The tunnel entrance behind us erupted with muzzle flashes. Attackers pouring in. Adele shoved me behind a pillar instantly. Stay down. The firefight detonated across the chamber. Stones shattered. Echoes became deafening. The scarred woman moved like someone born for violence, dropping two attackers with frightening precision. Adele was worse. Not frantic. Not emotional. Efficient. That was the terrifying part. He fought like a man who had accepted death years ago and simply forgot to stop functioning afterward. An attacker rushed our pillar unexpectedly. I fired instinctively. Missed completely. The man raised his rifle toward me. Then suddenly stopped. A knife protruded from his throat. He collapsed. Adele caught the falling rifle before it even hit the ground. My pulse hammered wildly. You carry knives too? He checked the weapon magazine calmly. I like options. More attackers flooded the chamber. Too many. Far too many. Even Adele saw it now. He looked toward the far end of the room where an enormous ancient stone doorway stood partially concealed behind collapsed debris. No, the scarred woman said immediately. What? I demanded. Adele ignored us both. Fall back route. The woman looked horrified. That passage was sealed for a reason. Excellent. Exactly what every evening needed. Ancient forbidden passages. Adele grabbed my wrist. We're going. Where? His eyes locked onto mine. The city beneath the city. Then the lights died completely. Darkness in ancient places feels different. Modern darkness is electrical. Temporary. Civilized. This darkness felt alive. The moment the lights died beneath Cairo, the underground chamber vanished completely. No outlines. No shadows. Just absolute black swallowing everything whole. Then came the gunfire. Muzzle flashes burst across the chamber like camera flashes from hell. Screams echoed through the pillars. Someone shouted in Arabic. Someone else never finished screaming. A strong hand grabbed mine instantly. Adele Ramon. Stay close. Easy for him to say. The man navigated darkness like he had personally designed it. I stumbled after him while the scarred woman covered our retreat with short controlled bursts from her rifle. Stone exploded around us as bullets chased through the chamber. Then suddenly Adele shoved me sideways. A bullet tore through the air where my head had been a fraction earlier. My stomach flipped violently. How are you seeing anything? I'm listening. Of course he was. Naturally, the terrifying soldier-criminal hybrid also hunted by echolocation now. We reached the enormous stone doorway at the far end of the chamber just as another explosion shook the underground complex. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Ancient mechanisms groaned deep inside the walls. The scarred woman slammed her shoulder against the partially collapsed entrance. It barely moved. Behind us, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. The attackers were advancing. Fast. Adele, she shouted urgently. He handed me his pistol. I stared at him. What? Point and pull. That is not proper training. It's efficient training. Then he planted both hands against the stone doorway and pushed. Muscles tightened beneath his soaked black shirt. The ancient stone groaned loudly before shifting open just enough to create a narrow gap. Cold air rushed from the darkness beyond. Not cool underground air. Cold. Wrong cold. The kind found in tombs and abandoned churches. The scarred woman muttered something deeply religious under her breath. I suddenly wanted sunlight with desperate intensity. Adele grabbed my wrist again. Move. We slipped through the opening just as gunfire erupted behind us once more. The woman followed immediately. Then Adele shoved the stone door closed from the inside with a thunderous crash. Silence. Not complete silence. Breathing. Dripping water. Distant echoes from somewhere impossibly deep below us. But compared to the gunfight outside, it felt like another world entirely. Adele flicked on a small tactical flashlight. And my entire body froze. The tunnel stretched downward into impossible darkness beneath Cairo. Ancient columns lined the passage walls. Massive carvings covered the stone surfaces. Symbols. Kings. Creatures with animal heads staring from walls untouched for thousands of years. The air smelled ancient. Dry dust and buried time. What is this place? I whispered. Nobody answered immediately. Even Adele seemed cautious now. That frightened me more than the gunfire had. The scarred woman finally spoke quietly. These tunnels were discovered accidentally during excavation beneath Old Cairo in the 1960s. By archaeologists? No. She looked at Adele. Smugglers. Naturally. The tunnel sloped deeper underground. Far deeper than should have been possible. As we moved carefully through the darkness, I noticed something unsettling. The walls changed. Not gradually. Abruptly. One section showed traditional hieroglyphics. The next looked completely unfamiliar. Older. Cruder. Almost violent in style. Figures kneeling before enormous black shapes. People with their mouths open as though screaming. I slowed. Adele noticed immediately. What? I pointed my flashlight toward the wall carvings. These aren't standard dynastic markings. His expression sharpened slightly. You can read them? Some. I stepped closer despite every survival instinct protesting. The symbols looked damaged intentionally, like someone had tried erasing parts of them. But one phrase remained visible. My blood went cold. What does it say? The scarred woman asked quietly. I swallowed hard. It translates roughly to, my voice weakened. The devourers below shall never rise. Silence. Then somewhere deep in the tunnels beneath us came a sound. Not human. Not mechanical. A low distant rumble that vibrated through the stone beneath our feet. The scarred woman immediately chambered another round into her rifle. Tell me that was shifting rock. Nobody answered her. Wonderful. Perfect. Exactly how every reasonable evening should progress. From Mafia shootout to cursed underground apocalypse. Adele stepped forward slowly, scanning the darkness ahead. For the first time since meeting him. He looked uncertain. Very slightly. But enough. That alone terrified me. Then his flashlight swept across the tunnel floor. Bodies. Old ones. Dozens of them. Not skeletons. Mummified remains. Preserved by the dry underground air. Some wore modern military uniforms. Others looked decades old. And every single corpse had the same expression frozen onto their faces. Pure terror. My stomach turned violently. What happened to them? The scarred woman crouched beside one of the bodies. No visible wounds. I noticed something then. The fingers. Every corpse had bloody fingertips. As though they had clawed desperately at the stone before dying. Adele's jaw tightened. We keep moving. Absolutely not, I snapped. People clearly died horribly down here. People are also trying to murder us up there. Fair. Infuriatingly fair. Still, my skin crawled as we continued deeper underground. The tunnel eventually opened into a massive subterranean chamber. And suddenly, I understood why my father disappeared. Ancient shelves lined the walls. Not treasure. Not gold. Records. Thousands upon thousands of sealed clay cylinders and metal containers stored beneath Cairo like a hidden library. A vault. No. An archive. At the center of the chamber stood a black stone pedestal. Empty. Except for one indentation shaped exactly like the brass key hidden inside my pocket. Adele saw my expression instantly. His eyes narrowed. You have something. Not a question. I backed away automatically. No. Nadine. The way he said my name this time was dangerous. Not threatening. Worse. Honest. Before either of us could speak again, the tunnel behind us echoed with distant voices. Karim's men had breached the door. They were coming. Fast. The scarred woman looked toward the approaching sounds. We're out of time. Adele's gaze never left mine. The key, he said quietly. I stared at him. At the ancient vault. At the empty pedestal waiting in the center of the chamber like a held breath. Then another sound rolled through the darkness beneath us. Closer this time. A deep vibrating growl beneath the stone. And somewhere far below Cairo, something answered it. The growl beneath the chamber rolled through the stone again. Closer. The ancient archive seemed to vibrate with it. I pulled the brass key from my pocket slowly. Even under the weak flashlight beams, the symbols across its surface seemed almost wet with age. Adele Ramon stared at it without blinking. The scarred woman whispered a prayer. And somewhere behind us in the tunnels, Karim's men were getting closer by the second. Tell me exactly what this opens, I said. Adele answered immediately. The Black Ledger. No cryptic nonsense this time. His jaw tightened slightly. The ledger is not one book. It's an archive containing evidence powerful enough to destabilize governments across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. I looked around the chamber again. Thousands of sealed records hidden beneath Cairo. My father built this? He protected it, Adele corrected quietly. Along with a handful of others. And Karim wants it to sell? No, Adele's eyes darkened. Karim wants to erase it. That surprised me. Why? Because his name appears everywhere inside it. Of course it did. Human trafficking. Weapons. Disappearances. Mass killings disguised as border conflicts. The kind of crimes men buried beneath flags and politics. My pulse hammered harder. And my father? A pause. Then, he discovered something connected to the ledger 12 years ago. Adele stepped closer. Something that terrified him. The approaching voices echoed louder through the tunnels. We were out of time. I looked at the pedestal. Then inserted the key. The chamber reacted instantly. A deep mechanical groan echoed through the underground vault as ancient locks shifted somewhere inside the walls. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Then the black stone pedestal slowly opened. Inside sat a single sealed metal cylinder. No larger than my forearm. My father's initials were engraved into the side. HES. My chest tightened painfully. Before I could touch it, gunfire exploded from the tunnel entrance. Karim's men flooded into the chamber. At last, a voice called calmly. Everyone turned. Karim Vaziri stepped into the archive wearing a dark tailored coat untouched by dust or blood. Silver beginning to streak his beard. Cold, intelligent eyes. The kind teacher probably feared by entire classrooms without ever raising his voice. The scarred woman lifted her rifle instantly. Karim smiled faintly. You always did aim first, Layla. So the scarred woman had a name. Good to know moments before probable death. Karim's gaze settled on Adele. Then on me. Your father was remarkably stubborn, he said softly. You inherited it. I stepped backward toward Adele instinctively. Karim noticed. And smiled slightly wider. You trust him already? He asked. That's unfortunate. Adele's voice turned lethal. Enough. Karim sighed almost sadly. You still don't understand, do you? His eyes shifted toward me. The Falcon cannot protect anyone close to him. The room tightened. Adele's expression became stone. Karim continued quietly. Everyone he loves dies. Something flickered behind Adele's eyes then. Pain. Real pain. For the first time, I understood the full weight he carried around like armor. Karim took another step forward. Give me the cylinder, Nadine. No. You don't even know what's inside. Neither do you. That amused him. You are absolutely your father's daughter. Then everything happened at once. One of Karim's men fired unexpectedly. Layla shot him immediately. Gunfire detonated across the archive chamber. Ancient records shattered. Stone exploded. Adele grabbed me and pulled me behind the pedestal as bullets screamed overhead. Karim's men spread through the chamber tactically. Too many. Far too many. Adele leaned around the stone and fired twice with brutal precision. 2 bodies dropped instantly. But more kept coming. Karim himself never moved. Just watched calmly from the tunnel entrance while chaos unfolded around him. Like a man already certain of victory. Then I noticed something horrifying. The gunfire was damaging the ancient shelves. Containers were breaking open. Documents spilling across the floor. Evidence. Decades of evidence. Destroying itself in the crossfire. Karim noticed too. And smiled. He finally understands, Karim said softly toward Adele. That was the plan. Not stealing the archive. Destroying it. Adele saw it too. His face hardened immediately. Get the cylinder out, he ordered me. What about you? I'll hold them here. No. His eyes snapped toward mine sharply. Nadine. You are not staying behind alone. For one strange second, silence existed between us despite the battle raging around the chamber. Then something warm flickered briefly behind his guarded expression. Tiny. Dangerous. Human. Karim noticed it too. And suddenly looked very interested. Well, he murmured. That complicates things. Layla shouted from across the chamber. Adele. More men were entering. We were being overrun. Adele made the decision instantly. He grabbed my hand. Run. This time, I didn't argue. We sprinted through a secondary tunnel while Layla covered us with automatic fire. The cylinder stayed clutched against my chest as ancient echoes thundered around us. Behind us, Karim's voice followed calmly through the chaos. You can run through Egypt all you like, Falcon. Then colder. She still dies in the end. Adele's grip tightened around my hand. Not fear. Anger. Pure controlled anger. We burst upward through a hidden exit staircase moments later and emerged into the storm-soaked streets of Cairo just before dawn. Rain hammered the city. Traffic lights flickered back to life. The blackout was ending. Sirens echoed across the skyline. And beside me, Adele finally released my hand slowly. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I looked down at the metal cylinder in my arms. What now? Adele stared toward the waking city. Now, he said quietly, we find your father. By sunrise, Cairo looked innocent again. That was the strange thing about cities with old souls. They swallowed violence overnight and served breakfast the next morning like nothing happened. Street vendors reopened stalls. Coffee steamed from roadside cafes. Traffic resumed its daily war against human patience. And somewhere beneath the city, bodies were still cooling beside ancient records soaked in blood. I sat silently in the back seat of Adele's black SUV as we sped south along the desert highway. Toward Luxor. Toward answers. Toward my father. The metal cylinder rested in my lap wrapped inside a dark cloth. I had not opened it yet. Partly because Adele warned me not to. Mostly because I was afraid of what waited inside. Layla drove while scanning mirrors every few seconds. Paranoid. Professional. Alive because of both. Adele sat beside me unusually quiet, one arm resting against the window while desert sunlight flickered across his face. Without the gunfire and darkness around him, he looked different in daylight. More tired. Still dangerous. But human now. Which somehow made him worse for my nervous system. I caught myself staring once. Unfortunately, he noticed. You're thinking loudly. I looked away immediately. I was thinking you need therapy. Layla snorted from the front seat. Adele looked almost offended. Therapy is for people with manageable problems. That may be the most emotionally concerning sentence I've ever heard. A faint almost smile touched his mouth. Tiny. Gone quickly. Still unfairly effective. I hated that. The SUV eventually stopped beside an isolated farmhouse near the outskirts of Luxor. Palm trees swayed against the desert wind while the Nile shimmered quietly in the distance. Peaceful. Too peaceful. Adele checked the perimeter before nodding once. We're safe here. Those are famous last words. True. Inside, the farmhouse looked abandoned except for one detail. Fresh tea. Still warm. My pulse stumbled. Someone was here. A floorboard creaked deeper inside the house. Adele reached for his pistol instantly. Layla raised her rifle. Then a voice emerged softly from the shadows. You always bring armed guests now. I forgot how to breathe. My father stepped into the room slowly. Older. Thinner. Gray threaded through his beard now. But alive. Alive. For a moment I could only stare at him. 15 years of grief crashed violently into confusion. You're dead, I whispered. My father smiled sadly. I was hoping to keep that arrangement a little longer. Then I slapped him. Hard. The entire room froze. Even Layla looked impressed. You disappeared. My voice cracked violently. Do you have any idea what you did to me? He accepted the anger quietly. Didn't defend himself. Didn't interrupt. That somehow made me angrier. I buried you. I shouted. I spent years thinking they killed you. I know. No, you don't. Silence stretched painfully between us. Then my father looked toward Adele. You protected her. Adele nodded once. Barely. Something passed silently between the two men. History. Trust. Maybe guilt. I suddenly realized something else too. My father didn't fear Adele. Not even slightly. That told me more about Adele than any rumor ever could. My father finally looked back at me. Nadine, the cylinder. Slowly, I handed it over. He opened it carefully at the kitchen table while all of us watched. Inside rested a thin black notebook. Simple. Ordinary looking. The black ledger. My father flipped through several pages before exhaling shakily. Thank God. I frowned. That's it. A notebook cost all this? Not a notebook. My father looked up grimly. An insurance policy. He turned the book toward me. Names filled every page. Politicians. Military generals. International companies. Criminal syndicates. Beside each name sat transactions, photographs, coordinates, dates. Evidence. Enough to destroy entire governments. Then I saw one name repeated constantly across dozens of entries. Karim Vaziri. Arms deals. Mass disappearances. Execution orders. Human trafficking routes across North Africa. My stomach turned. He built an empire using wars, my father said quietly. Adele leaned against the doorway silently. He also murdered everyone who tried exposing him. My father looked toward him carefully. Not everyone. A strange silence followed that. Then suddenly Layla stiffened near the window. Vehicles. Everyone moved instantly. Adele crossed the room in seconds and checked outside. His expression hardened. How many? My father asked. Too many. Of course. Because peace in my life apparently had a strict 2-minute limit. Black SUVs sped across the desert road toward the farmhouse. Karim had found us again. Layla cursed softly. We can't outrun them this time. Adele looked toward my father. Then toward me. A decision formed behind his eyes. Cold. Final. No, I said immediately. He looked mildly surprised. You don't even know what I was going to say. You have the face. The face? The sacrificial face. Men in action films always make it before doing something reckless and emotionally damaging. Layla actually laughed once under her breath. Adele ignored both of us. There's a river access point behind the property, he said calmly. Layla will take you south. What about you? I'll slow them down. Absolutely not. Something sharp twisted painfully in my chest at the idea. Far too sharp for someone I met less than 24 hours ago. Which was deeply concerning. You are not dying dramatically in the desert, I snapped. A faint warmth flickered in his eyes again. Then gunfire erupted outside the farmhouse. Windows exploded inward. Everyone dropped instantly. Karim's men had arrived. Gunfire tore through the farmhouse walls. Wood splintered across the kitchen. Glass exploded inward. The peaceful little house beside the Nile transformed instantly into another battlefield. I hit the floor beside the table while Adele Ramon returned fire through the shattered window with terrifying precision. 2 attackers dropped outside immediately. Layla overturned the kitchen table for cover. My father shoved the black ledger back into the metal cylinder and handed it to me. Protect this. Why does everyone keep giving me internationally catastrophic objects? No one answered. Outside, engines roared across the desert property. Men spread through the palm groves surrounding the farmhouse. Professional formation. Karim wanted this finished. Now. A grenade crashed through the broken window. My soul briefly left my body. Adele grabbed me and threw us both behind a stone support wall just as the explosion ripped through the room. The blast shook the farmhouse violently. Dust filled the air. Somewhere nearby, Layla was still firing in short controlled bursts. My ears rang painfully. Adele's arm remained around me instinctively, shielding my head from debris. Again. The man protected people like it annoyed him personally. You injured? He asked immediately. No. You're bleeding. That seems to happen constantly around you. Another almost smile. Very brief. Very dangerous to my emotional stability. Then his expression sharpened again as footsteps approached outside. Too close. Adele stood instantly. River. Now. We sprinted through the back of the farmhouse into blazing morning sunlight. The Nile stretched behind the property, wide and glittering beneath the Egyptian sun. A small motorboat waited hidden beneath reeds along the riverbank. Layla fired behind us while my father struggled toward the boat. Gunmen emerged from the palm trees. More than before. Far too many. Then a calm voice echoed across the property. Enough. Everything stopped. Even the gunfire. Karim Vaziri stepped out from between the trees, adjusting his cuffs calmly like a businessman arriving early for lunch. No rush. No panic. Certain of victory. His eyes settled on me first. Then the cylinder in my hands. You've made this unnecessarily exhausting, Nadine. Adele moved slightly in front of me. Subtle. Protective. Karim noticed immediately. And smiled. There it is again. Adele's voice turned cold enough to frost glass. Leave. Karim ignored him. You know, he said conversationally to me, he once dragged a wounded soldier 12 kilometers through active gunfire to save him. I frowned slightly. Karim tilted his head toward Adele. That soldier betrayed him 3 months later. A shadow crossed Adele's face. Small. But real. Karim continued softly. He keeps believing he can save people. It's his most self-destructive quality. Karim, Adele warned. But you never do save them, do you? Karim asked gently. Silence. Painful silence. Then I understood. Everyone he loved died because he always stayed behind. Always sacrificed himself. Always carried everyone else out first. My chest tightened painfully. Karim sighed. Give me the ledger. No, I said. His eyes shifted toward me carefully. You would risk war for documents? I lifted the cylinder slightly. These aren't documents. They're proof. Something colder entered Karim's expression then. Not anger. Contempt. The world survives because powerful men commit ugly acts in darkness, he said calmly. Your father learned that too late. And you became one of them. A pause. Then Karim smiled faintly. Smart girl. Gunfire exploded suddenly from the riverbank. Not Karim's men. New shooters. Chaos detonated instantly across the property. Karim's forces scattered for cover as bullets ripped through the palm trees from elevated positions nearby. Snipers. Professional ones. Layla looked sharply toward the cliffs above the Nile. What the hell? Adele understood first. His expression darkened instantly. Interpol. Wonderful. International law enforcement had joined our delightful little apocalypse. Vehicles appeared along the ridge roads overlooking the river. Helicopters thundered faintly in the distance. Karim swore softly for the first time. Finally. A human emotion. The distraction lasted only seconds. But it was enough. Adele grabbed my hand hard. Boat. We sprinted toward the river while gunfire erupted from every direction. Interpol agents engaged Karim's men across the property as helicopters approached overhead. My father stumbled near the waterline. Adele caught him instantly. Of course he did. Even while running through automatic gunfire, the man still saved people on instinct. We reached the boat. Layla untied it quickly. Bullets struck the water around us. Karim emerged from cover near the farmhouse ruins and raised a pistol directly toward me. Time slowed. I saw the shot before it happened. Adele did too. He moved without hesitation. The gunshot cracked across the riverbank. Pain crossed Adele's face sharply. Then blood spread across his side. My breath vanished. Adele collapsed into the boat beside me as Layla accelerated hard into the Nile currents. Chaos faded behind us while the boat sped south across glittering water beneath the morning sun. Karim stood silently on the riverbank, growing smaller in the distance, watching us escape. Again. I dropped beside Adele immediately. Blood soaked through his black shirt rapidly. Too much blood. Stay with me, I said sharply. His eyes flicked toward me lazily despite the pain. There it is. What? That concern. This is not the time for flirting. A weak laugh escaped him. Actual laughter this time. Low. Rough. Beautiful in the worst possible way. Then his face paled further. Fear slammed into me violently. Real fear. Not survival fear. Not gunfight fear. Something deeper. I pressed both hands against the wound desperately as the Nile carried us south beneath the Egyptian sun. And for the first time since meeting the Falcon of Alexandria, I realized losing him would destroy me. The boat cut through the Nile like a wounded animal. Water sprayed against the sides while Layla Hassan pushed the engine harder than it probably deserved. Behind us, helicopters circled the northern skyline, shrinking slowly into the heat haze over Luxor. But all I could see was blood. Too much of it. Adel Rahman lay against the side of the boat, breathing shallowly while I pressed my hands against the gunshot wound. Stay awake, I ordered. His eyes opened slightly. You're very aggressive when worried. You are literally bleeding to death. Fair point. My father crouched beside us, checking the wound quickly. The bullet passed through, he said. That's good. There is absolutely nothing about this situation that feels good. Still, the bleeding eventually slowed. Barely. Adele's gaze found mine again. Steady even now. How infuriating. You should have let Karim shoot me, I muttered shakily. His expression changed instantly. Not soft. Sharp. Never say that again. The force behind the word startled me. Silence settled between us after that. Heavy silence. The kind filled with truths neither person was ready to touch yet. By nightfall, we reached a safe house near the southern outskirts of Aswan. Hidden. Quiet. Far from Cairo's violence. Layla helped my father inside first while I stayed beside Adele beneath the fading orange sky over the Nile. The world finally felt still. No gunfire. No alarms. No running. Just desert wind and river water. Adele sat carefully on the wooden dock after I finished rebandaging the wound. You missed a spot, he said quietly. I frowned. What? He touched my cheek gently. There was dried blood near my jaw. Not mine. His thumb brushed it away slowly. My pulse completely betrayed me. Again. The man looked devastating under Egyptian sunset light. Wounded. Exhausted. Alive. And somehow still watching me like I was the dangerous one. I spent years hating ghosts, I admitted softly. His expression remained calm. My father. His disappearance. Everything connected to this. The river moved quietly around us. I thought finding answers would fix something. And did it? I looked toward the darkening Nile. No. A pause. Answers rarely heal people, Adele said. They just stop the questions. That sounded like experience speaking. I turned toward him carefully. What happens now? For Karim? His eyes darkened slightly. Interpol will dismantle most of his network within weeks using the ledger. And him? Silence. Then? He'll run. But he's still alive. Yes. I hated how unfinished that felt. Maybe Adele did too. Then he looked at me differently somehow. Less guarded. More dangerous because of it. You should disappear for a while, he said quietly. New passport. New country. New life. And you? His faint smile returned. Small. Sad. I don't think my life works that way. There it was again. That terrible instinct he carried. To separate himself from anything good before it could be destroyed. I stepped closer. You don't get to decide what happens to me. His eyes lifted toward mine slowly. The sunset turned the Nile gold around us. You have no idea what staying near me costs. I think I'm beginning to. For a moment neither of us moved. The entire world seemed to narrow into river wind and heartbeat silence. Then finally, Adele touched my face carefully like he was afraid of breaking something. And kissed me. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Slow enough to feel honest. The kind of kiss built from surviving terrible things together. I slid my fingers into his shirt instinctively, pulling him closer despite the bandages and gunshot wound and every intelligent decision available to me. Somewhere behind us, Layla made a deeply annoyed sound and walked back inside the safe house. Good. Let her suffer. When we finally pulled apart, Adele rested his forehead briefly against mine. You are going to ruin my ability to make rational decisions. I smiled slightly. Good. For the first time since this nightmare began. The Falcon of Alexandria actually laughed. Real laughter. Warm. Human. And under the Egyptian night sky beside the Nile, with the black ledger finally exposed and the ghosts of Cairo beginning to fade behind us, I realized something strange. The blackout that changed my life had not plunged me into darkness. It had revealed everything hiding inside it.
Thank you for listening. Tell me, which African country would you like the next Mafia story to be based in and why? Drop your answers in the comments and I will take it from there. If you enjoyed the story, like, share, subscribe, because somewhere in Africa, another story is already unfolding.